Imagine Atlas, the titan of myth, condemned to hold an endless burden on his shoulders for all eternity. No rest, no hope of an ending. The most unsettling part of his story isn't the weight of the heavens, but his inertia. Atlas never stopped to ask whether the world would truly fall if he chose to let go. He simply stayed there, jaw clenched, because the weight had become his only way of being alive. The punishment was no longer the load, but forgetting he could put it down. You may recognize that heaviness right now as you try to get through your daily routine. It isn't the sky crushing you, yet it feels just as ancient and just as impossible to release. It's the knot you carry everywhere, the one you've learned to call mine. Without noticing, it's something you're holding, not something you are. Today, we're going to look closely at that shadow that follows you in silence. You didn't choose it in one moment. You just adapted day after day until the strain felt normal, necessary, part of your identity quietly. But first answer this. Why do you keep carrying a pain that no longer has a cause? You wake up on an ordinary day. The coffee's perfect, and nothing urgent is on fire. And yet a heaviness settles in your chest, with no clear reason for being there. It's as if a grey cloud has moved into your living room without asking permission. You start searching for what you did wrong, because on paper everything looks fine. Eckhart Tolle says 2 layers of discomfort can be living inside you at the same time. There is the suffering you manufacture right now, and the suffering from the past that still lives in your muscles and your silences. If you want to stop feeding the load, you first have to see what it is made of. No life escapes sadness, but most of what hurts you is unnecessary. You create it while you let the mind take the wheel, unchecked and unseen. The pain you feel today is always a form of non-acceptance, an unconscious resistance to what is. In your head, that resistance becomes constant judgment of people, events, and yourself. In your body, it shows up as a dark pressure, a negativity that tightens from the inside. The more you identify with the familiar mental noise, the harder each emotional hit lands. If you can't inhabit this moment with presence, every small wound leaves a residue behind. That residue doesn't vanish. It gathers, and it joins the pain you were already carrying. It sinks into the basement of the mind and into the memory of the cells. It includes the damage you took as a child, simply by being born into a world that didn't know how to hold you. It isn't the sky Atlas carried, but it feels just as old, just as endless, and just as hard to put down. If you picture this pain as an invisible entity with a life of its own, you're close to the truth. Tolle calls it the pain body, a structure living in you that can either sleep or wake up hungry. In some people, it is active all the time, turning their days into continuous drama. Others feel it only in certain situations, an argument with a partner, a loss, a sharp disappointment. Any spark can light it, especially if it matches an old wound. A random thought or a careless comment from someone close can be enough to switch it on. When was the last time you felt something take over your words in a fight as if it wasn't you speaking? Some pain bodies are irritating but harmless, like a child who won't stop complaining. Others are destructive, real monsters that look for drama because drama is their fuel. When that creature wakes up in someone you thought you knew, the shock can be huge, but it matters far more that you learn to see it in yourself than to diagnose it in other people. Stay alert for any sign of unhappiness. It may arrive as irritation, a dark mood, or a sudden urge to hurt someone back. Catch it at the exact second it begins to move. Notice the pressure in your throat before it becomes a storm. This force doesn't want you to heal. It wants you to stay unconscious. The moment you see it clearly, it has nowhere to hide. It feeds on your lack of presence, and it survives by pulling you into reaction. So don't fight it with more thinking. Meet it with attention, right where it lives, in the body, in the tightening, in the heat. When you can hold that sensation without a story, the pain body loses its grip and fades. You're walking down the hallway at home and you notice something out of place. A pair of shoes left on the floor, a stain no one cleaned up. Immediately, something flares in your stomach. It isn't just annoyance, it's heat rising, looking for someone to blame. That reaction isn't you, it's something living in you, and it's hungry. Tolle says, this entity you carry simply wants to survive, like any living thing in nature. The problem is that its only method of survival is to make you forget yourself and identify with it without noticing. It needs to take the wheel, to steer your words, and to use your own body as its vehicle. It wants you to speak through it, to act through it, to feel right while it burns. And its food isn't peace or calm, but any experience that matches its emotional weight. It feeds on anger, pointless arguments, stored hatred and sadness that has turned heavy. When the pain body takes you over, it starts seeking or creating situations that mirror its bitterness so it can feed. You pick a fight with your partner, or you keep replaying a humiliating memory, turning it over again and again, because pain can only feed on pain. Joy is something it can't digest. It doesn't want solutions. It wants continuation. Have you noticed how, at times, it's as if you go looking for reasons to feel bad? Once that shadow has control, you want more of the same. You become the victim who complains about bad luck, or the aggressor who goes hunting for someone to hurt. Deep down, there isn't much difference between those roles. You're feeding the same invisible guest. Of course, you'll say you don't want to suffer, that you want harmony more than anything. Later, when it passes, you may even wonder why you acted that way. But if you look honestly at your daily reactions, you'll see that a large part of what you think and do is organized to make sure the discomfort never leaves. If you were fully conscious of this, the pattern would break apart right now. No one chooses madness on purpose. This shadow has one deep fear. It fears that you will switch on the light of attention. It knows its life depends on you continuing to look away. As long as you refuse to bring awareness to that dark corner, you'll be condemned to repeat the same story again and again. The monster seems unbeatable when you don't look at it, but in truth, it's a ghost with no real weight, and it can't withstand the power of presence. You may have heard people say suffering is an illusion. It sounds nice, but is it real for you? A belief is useless if you're still trapped in anguish. What matters is turning that truth into lived experience. This burden doesn't want you to face it directly. The moment you aim your attention at the sensation in your chest and watch it without naming it, the identification breaks. You stop being the pain. You become the one who sees it. And in that seeing, it begins to starve. Imagine you're walking down the street and out of nowhere, a bitter memory ambushes you. It isn't a clear thought. It's pressure in the chest, a knot in the throat that seems to belong to no one. In that moment, you have two options: get lost in the usual drama, or turn and face the sensation. Have you noticed how a problem shrinks the instant you stop avoiding it and look it in the eye? Tolle says that when you realize the discomfort isn't you, something begins to change. Unconsciousness created that weight, but pure awareness transforms it. St. Paul put it like this: everything exposed to the light becomes light. This isn't a trick, it's a natural principle. You can't punch darkness into disappearing, and you can't fight accumulated pain with brute force. Why keep carrying a pain that no longer has a cause? You can't battle it, but you also don't have to drag it on your back. When you try to resist what you feel, you create more inner conflict, and conflict is more fuel for the fire. Observation is enough. Observation means admitting that the knot is here now, without trying to make it leave. That pain is trapped life energy that split from the natural flow of your life. It became an autonomous entity, like a motor running against life, like a wounded animal biting its own tail because it can't recognize itself. As you begin to watch and stop identifying with the load, the entity won't surrender easily. It will look for any trick to hook you again. Even if you stop feeding it, it still carries momentum, like a heavy wheel that keeps turning after you stop pushing. At this stage, you may feel physical discomfort, but don't panic. These are the last thrashes of something losing its hold. Now you must become the alert guardian of your inner space. Be present enough to feel the energy of that unease without letting it seize the steering wheel. The moment your thoughts align with the pain, you hand it control. If anger is dominant and you start replaying what they did, or rehearsing what you'll say to get revenge, you've already lost. The pain has dressed itself up as you. Where there is anger, there is always hidden hurt underneath. Or a grey mood arrives, and you begin thinking how terrible your life is. Your mind has become the shadow's accomplice. That is vulnerability. To be unconscious is precisely that, fused with an emotional or mental pattern until the observer disappears. It's like forgetting you're watching a film and believing you are the suffering character. Sustained attention cuts the cable that connects the discomfort to your thoughts. That's where the alchemy happens, turning the cheap metal of suffering into the pure gold of presence. The inner split begins to close, and you start to feel whole again. Your responsibility now is simple. Don't manufacture more weight. When you feel the storm returning, bring attention to what is happening inside you. Recognize the old visitor. Let it be there. Don't spin it into a story. Don't judge what you feel. Stay right here watching. Feel the raw sensation as sensation. Heat, tightness, vibration, pressure. Let it move through the body without commentary. If the mind offers explanations, note them and return to the feeling. Each return is a refusal to feed the pain body. You are giving it light, not arguments. With time, you'll notice the wheel slowing, the impulses weakening, the space widening. The discomfort may surge once more, like a final wave, but presence holds. In that holding, you discover something shocking. The witness is untouched. The storm passes, but the awareness remains. That is your real power, pain, and the silent one who sees it. From here, healing isn't a battle, it's remembering. And every time you return, you step out of the spell again. Have you ever caught yourself staring at an old scar on your arm, or rereading that message that cut you, almost as if you want the wound to open again? Something in us is drawn back to the site of damage. It isn't masochism, it's the inertia of what feels familiar. If you can stay awake enough to notice that pull the moment it appears, you gain the chance to turn stored weight into pure presence. Atlas didn't drop the load even when Heracles offered him relief. He chose to take it back because it was the only thing he knew. That is resistance to familiar pain. We would rather carry the weight we've learned, however destructive, than risk the strange freedom of walking through life with empty arms. Which part of you feels oddly safe while suffering the same old suffering? Pain becomes a shelter from uncertainty. The process is so simple you could explain it to a child. Once you know, by direct experience, what it means to be the silent witness of what is happening inside you, you hold the key to leaving your own mental cell. But don't fool yourself. When you try to shed that old skin, you will meet strong resistance. If you spend decades believing that constant sadness or constant anger is you, the mind panics at the thought of letting it go. Who would you be tomorrow if the drama that defines you simply wasn't there? That unconscious fear of losing identity makes you choose known misery over the risk of something new. Look honestly at the peculiar comfort of feeling like the wounded victim. Notice the small thrill of having mapped a problem perfectly, even though the map changed nothing. Watch the urgency to speak about your pain, or to chew the same injustice again and again. Resistance weakens the instant you make it conscious. No one can do this work for you, though being near people with clarity helps your own flame grow. It's like a log catching fire when it touches another already burning. Yet behind that flame sits a deeper fear you still don't want to face. It is the fear of emptiness, of quiet, of standing without the familiar story running in the background. So the mind offers you the same loop, the same complaint, the same replay, because it would rather hurt in a known way than rest in the unknown. Your task is simple. Feel the pull, name it as habit, and return to presence before the old script speaks for you. Right now, choose. You're having dinner with someone, and a tiny disagreement comes up about a date or a name. You feel a spark in your chest. Your body tightens. Your mind speeds up, hunting for arguments to crush the other person's view. Why does something so small make you react as if a predator were in the room? That sensation is your body responding to an alarm message coming from your head. Your mind is shouting one thing: danger, we are under threat. And the emotion rising from that shout is fear. You might think you're afraid of failure or loneliness, but if you trace that feeling to its root, you'll find something darker: the ego's fear of ceasing to exist. For the identity you've built, being right isn't a luxury. It feels like survival. In that confusion, the fear of death leaks into the details of your day. Even the compulsive need to prove the other person wrong becomes a fight not to die. If you identify with an idea and someone questions it, it can feel as if your very being is at risk of being erased. That's why we fight. That's why relationships fracture and walls go up. To the ego, being wrong is the end. It's why your pulse jumps, why your jaw sets, why you feel the urge to win, even when the subject is trivial. The body prepares for battle because the mind has labeled it as threat. And once that label is there, you stop listening. You start collecting evidence, building a case, rehearsing the verdict. You don't notice you've left the table and entered the courtroom. Do you recognize that urgency to have the last word even when you know it doesn't matter? Behind all your fears, there is one fear, and it is exactly what keeps the pain you're carrying alive. If you stop believing you are your thoughts, whether you're right or wrong loses its grip. You can speak firmly, but without the aggression that defends a sandcastle. Start noticing every time you go on the defensive. Ask, in that moment, what am I really defending? You're not protecting truth. You're protecting a fictional image of yourself. As you watch the pattern, as you become the witness of your own tension, the knot begins to loosen. Under the light of attention, that hunger for power over others reveals itself for what it is. Weakness dressed up as strength. Real power doesn't need to shout. Most people you pass on the street live in this constant alert, even if they don't know it. Nearly everyone you know is fighting the same inner battle, lost in a fog that swings between constant worry and outright panic. It's the background hum of a mind that feels separated from everything. We only notice when fear becomes so unbearable we can no longer ignore it. But as long as you keep running from that sensation, the emptiness will stay there, waiting to be filled with things that never satisfy. You look for relief in success or in other people's approval, but that relief is only a patch. Everything you chase to fill the hole leaves your hands empty because the hole isn't where you think it is. You know that feeling of being at home, with everything apparently in order, and then suddenly a strange knot forms in your stomach. There's no real threat. Nobody is shouting at you, and you're not in physical danger. But the sting of unease won't let you sit still. You check your phone, pace the room, or open the fridge without being hungry, searching for something that might calm the agitation. That small spark of anxiety drives almost everything we do. Why does fear follow us even when nothing bad is happening? Sometimes we confuse fear with basic intelligence. If you see a hot hob, you don't put your hand on it. That isn't fear. It's knowing you'll get burned. To move through life, you don't need to be scared. You need common sense and memory. If someone threatened you with violence right now, your body would react instinctively to protect you. But that is a survival reflex. That isn't the point here. Tolle is talking about psychological fear, divorced from any concrete danger. It disguises itself as worry, nervousness, or a constant tension that watches you like a guard. It always points to something that might happen, never to what is actually happening. You're here, listening to this, but your mind has already moved into the future. Tomorrow's meeting, next week's bill, the plan you'll need if things go wrong. A crack opens between the present where your body is and the future where your head has gone. In that empty gap, anxiety grows. Notice this. You can always deal with what is in front of you now, but you cannot manage a mental projection. You cannot fight what doesn't exist yet. Right now the body is fine, but the mind is rehearsing disasters. It drags you away from the room you're in, into imagined scenarios again endlessly. And as long as you believe you are the noise in your head, that fictional identity, what Tolle calls the ego, will keep governing your life. That false me always feels small, insecure, and under threat. No matter how confident you try to look, it carries a sense that something is missing, a lack that bites from the inside. For some people, it feels like not being good enough. For others, it becomes a hunger for things, people, or achievements. And it keeps asking the same question in disguise. Why am I still carrying a pain that no longer has a cause? So you try to fill the hole with success, money, special relationships, or the applause of other people. You believe that if you get the car, the job title, the partner, then finally you'll feel peace, and you might get it. But the satisfaction lasts a breath. Before long, the emptiness opens again, just as deep as ever. Then the real trouble begins, because you can't keep fooling yourself with the next purchase or the next goal. While your life is led by a hungry mind, peace will be only a short pause between one desire and the next. Because this identity has no real root, it must cling to the outside world to say, "This is me." You identify with your profession, your social standing, your education, your body, your appearance. You hold tight to family history, political views, or religion as if they were a life raft. But none of those labels are you. You defend them because they give you a script. When the script is threatened, the mind sounds the alarm again. A comment, a setback, a stranger's opinion can feel like an attack on your very existence. So you tighten, perform, explain, and chase reassurance. The future becomes your shelter. Once I fix this, once I prove that, then I'll be safe. Yet the safety never arrives because the ego can't rest in now. It only knows how to keep reaching. Sooner or later, those defenses have to be dropped. Death is simply the process of being stripped of what is not real. But you don't have to wait for the end. The secret to living is learning to die before you die. Not a physical ending, but letting the mask built on suffering collapse. When that identity falls away, you discover that what remains underneath is the only thing that could never be wounded. And in that discovery, the burden finally loses its meaning. When you refuse to put down the weight you carry, it often leads to the same territory, the dark night of the soul. This isn't a bad day or a passing sadness that time smooths over. It's deeper. It's a collapse of perception, a brutal eruption of meaninglessness that stains everything grey. In that state, the ground beneath you disappears, and you hang in a void that feels uncomfortably close to depression. It's the moment the framework of your world gives way. Often, this darkness is triggered by an external catastrophe. The death of someone close, a professional disaster, the end of a project into which you poured all your hope. If you built your worth on achievements, possessions, or the role you played for others, the blow is devastating. What breaks isn't life itself, but the meaning your mind assigned to it. The result is absolute darkness, a place with no obvious exit, where the old answers no longer work. Yet there is a way through the tunnel. You can emerge into a transformed awareness. Life returns, but not as a meaning you can pin down with concepts. It's a rebirth that rises from the demolition of what came before. The dark night is a death you undergo while you still breathe. What dies there is not you, but the false sense of self, the identity you built on accumulated suffering. Imagine Atlas finally releasing the sky and discovering, frozen in awe, that it doesn't fall. The heavens never depended on his shoulders. The weight he carried for ages was not a real responsibility, but a sentence accepted through ignorance. That is what it means to die before you die, to drop the identity you thought was mandatory and discover your essence is untouchable. The dark night strips away what you are not, so you can recognize what you have always been. Looking back, you see you had to pass through it in order to wake up. It feels cruel because the mind loses its familiar reference points. The roles that once propped you up, worker, partner, achiever, helper, stop giving you a place to stand. You may wake up and feel as if nothing matters, as if the world has gone silent and you are the only one hearing it. But this silence is not punishment, it is space. In that space you can meet the simple fact of being without props, without performance. The old self protests, yet the deeper you remains. That is the beginning of real freedom. And from there, meaning returns, not as theory, but as presence. You've seen how this pain feeds on your thoughts. Now, faced with this liberating emptiness, we reach the question beating beneath every line. Why are you still carrying a pain that no longer has a cause? Because you clung to the burden out of fear that without it, you would be no one. The pain was your compass, your story, your way of existing. But the cause vanished long ago. Only the habit of holding the unholdable remained. When you release the mask of the sufferer, the weight dissolves. The sky holds itself, and you can finally walk free. And that concludes our video. If you enjoyed the content as much as we did, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your feedback and suggestions for future videos. And don't forget to turn on notifications to stay up to date with all our updates. Thanks for being part of our community. See you in the next video.